Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, back with some problem diagnosis, and probably one of the more interesting issues that I've had, but this one will cover a couple of different facets of spinning reels and spinning reel problems all wrapped up in one. This is a Penn Captiva. It's a live liner, which means that this one is used to feed bait. So this one will enable you in the live lining mode, which would be a flip up, to spool out the line, and then once you set the reel, the crank, you're locked in, and now the top drag will be the one that's doing the work. Well, if you're looking at this is pyramided or coned, if you will. It's got a lot of line wrapped around the bottom and very little line wrapped around the top. And frequently I am asked, how do I fix that condition? Well, normally this condition is caused by spool shim washers that are sitting under the spool. So let's take a look at that. And while we do that, I want to stop and thank our first responders and essential personnel, all of the people in medical, fire, rescue, essential services, our local hometown heroes, and everyone who's playing a part in keeping us safe during this pandemic. I truly do appreciate your efforts, and I thank you personally for all it is that you're doing to keep us well. So we've got an odd lining situation here. What happens with that is, if you do not have enough washers on the bottom, then the spool is going to ride low, and you're going to have all of the line gathered up top. Well, the inverse says you don't have enough washers, and if you do not have enough washers, the spool doesn't raise up enough and everything gathers towards the bottom. So when I take the spool off of this, I notice that I have a click ratchet. That click ratchet is actually triggered by this little toothed gear in here. You can see it on the spring. And that'll make a click as it touches each of these little crowns. So let's see if we can just make it click for you. I'm being quiet, or I'm trying to be quiet so you can hear it. And you'll also hear it going backwards. That's when you're in bait feed mode. So that's the function of this star piece here, but it does not have anything to do with the way that the line gathers. That's the spool shim washer right here. And normally you would see 1, 2, or 3 of these. And actually, when they ship these reels new, or many different brands when they ship new, will include extra washers so that you can work on tuning that out right. Well, this has one washer on it, and the one washer, when you look at it, is what's on the schematic. So that kind of leads you to think something else could be wrong with this reel. One of the things I like to do is, let's tighten this up. When I'm looking at that line gathering, I want to see, does the spool make the full travel? Let's tighten that down. And you want to give it a crank. And you want to make sure that the spool is all the way on the bottom. There you go. So this is nested pretty close to the bottom. Some reels have a little bit more, some have a little bit less spacing, but for the most part this is nesting on the bottom, which would say that you should have the appropriate clearance to come up top here and spool that. Well, I'm looking at where this line goes now, and if I just kind of parallel that with my pick, you're going to see that the bottom of the line on that roller there, the bottom of the line is only about 3/4 of the way up the spool. I hope you can see that on this little thing. It says we got a problem with this reel. It seems to be on the bottom here is fine, but as we spin it, yep, you're going all the way up top for sure. And all the line here, you can see, well, that's where it's driving this thing. We're coming almost into the spool when I go to the top of the stroke there. So that's no good. Something's going on here. Well, the next thing that you would look at in terms of a problem determination would be, is the axle shaft performing properly? In other words, should the axle shaft, even though we're pretty low here, let's get it to the bottom of the stroke. Even though we have this room down here, should it actually be going to the base? So let me show you what I mean by that. A lot of these spools have tolerances that'll bring it very low into the base. So if I remove these two pieces and I put the spool down, in other words, am I gathering here? Can I close that up? Is something wrong that the spool axle shaft isn't going down to just kind of give you minimum clearance there? But if I look here again, and I run my line through there, I still don't pick up the top end of this carry, which is kind of frustrating when you start to do your analysis on it. So the first thing you think of is the axle shaft crosswind member block installed the wrong way? It's easy enough on some of these reels, not this one in particular, but it's easy enough on some of these reels to have a problem where somebody put the crosswind block in upside down. Happens all the time on the older reels. I can't tell you how many times you'll have a crosswind block that'll be odd shaped, kind of almost like a saddle kind of a thing. It'll come out and it'll run down and over, and a lot of times the people will flip it and the high point will be up top, and that stops the travel of the spool going down, when in essence that hump, if you will, has been designed to fit into the case below. Well, regardless, when we put this in, we don't have the reach to get to the top of the spool, right? And one way to test the crosswind block is simply to pull up and down on this, just like that, and there's no movement. So you can say, okay, I don't have a broken axle shaft, I don't have something that appears to be impeding that. So the next thing you wonder is, do I have the right spool on the reel? So this is a Captiva Live Liner 5000, and I'm going to go up and just check the spool, and sure enough it says Live Liner, and it says CLL 5000. So when we start to look at that, it's not the spool issue. Well, here it is. And it took me a while to find this one, and I thought I would kind of share this one with you. I was looking at the performance of the bail, trying to understand where that's fitting in and why it's gathering low, and I noticed what is apparently a pretty big gap here underneath the cover. Now that shouldn't be. That should be tight. If you check this side here, you can see there is no gap on this. And this one's pretty well beat up too, right? It's got a lot of nicks and scrapes in that, which would say that that's original to the reel. But this one isn't. There are no scrapes or anything. It looks like a new bail arm. And you know what? It's the wrong bail arm. So how do you like that? So you really have to go through a lot of different thinking when you see this kind of condition exist. And somebody had this reel, recognized that the bail didn't work for whatever reason, put a bail arm on that was not the right bail arm for this reel, and that's caused this to not have enough reach. So I just went to the schematic. It's available at mysticparts.com. I went in and took a look at this one, and sure enough, the design on the new bail arm is different. It's got a hole up here, and the reach arm is different. The reach arm comes up another ½ an inch. Well, that makes sense, right? Because if you got to get to the top of the spool on the low stroke, you need more reach on that bail arm. So I've ordered the bail arm. We're going to replace that, and we're going to solve this line gathering thing. So the point on this one is that there's a lot of different things that can cause spool gathering. The most obvious and the usual one is the lack of spool shim washers underneath that sit on top of that click ratchet, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it has to do with the axle shaft, sometimes it has to do with the crosswind block, and quite honestly, this is the first time I've seen where it has to do with the wrong bail arm being on this reel. So I hope you've appreciated a little bit of insight into what causes that condition, and a little bit of insight into what wackiness you find sometimes when you go to repair a reel. You'll notice in this case somebody put the wrong bail arm on. Well, the rest is history. This is what happens as a result. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification button. That way you'll see not only the fix on this one when I replace that bail arm, but you'll see all of the videos that I post. I post on everything: salt water, fresh water, spinning reels, conventional reels, bait casting reels, whatever. And you'll be able to select which ones you want to watch. If you like the video, please indicate that by liking it. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be repaired, like this one, and you're not up for doing it yourself, well, if you contact me on the information on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with reel repair information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing you all well. Please stay safe. The pandemic is still out there and people are still getting sick. Please stay well, stay fishing, stay watching, and have a great day.